Brace yourself, friend, because this is no walk in the park. Cronos, the new dawn has arrived like a punch in the face, straight from the twisted minds of Bloober Team, the Polish team that already left us trembling with the Silent Hill 2 remake. This third-person survival horror drags you into a post-apocalyptic Poland where horror and science fiction embrace in an uneasy but fascinating way. Ready to travel back in time, fight monsters straight out of an H.R. Giger nightmare, and sweat every bullet as if it were your last? Stay with me, because this review will break down the brutality and ugliness of this game with a touch of humor, a pinch of criticism, and a good dose of gamer passion. We're going to explore every corner of this title, from its oppressive atmosphere to its technical stumbles, so you know if it's worth diving into this retro-futuristic hell. Imagine a world where everything went to hell. A catastrophic event called the Change turned humans into grotesque creatures known as orphans. You are the Traveler, a sort of space agent with a suit that screams Dead Space and a mission that sounds like something out of 12 Monkeys. Your job? Explore a devastated future, find time portals, and travel to 1980s Poland to collect the essences, aka souls, of key people who could save humanity. Sounds epic, right? And it is, sometimes. The narrative grips you from the first minute with a dense atmosphere, full of mystery and a political undertone that puts its finger on the wound of communist Poland. But, as in any good horror story, not everything is perfect, and this is where the dance between the brutal and the ugly begins. If Bloober Team knows how to do anything, it's create worlds that make you feel small, vulnerable, and frankly, want to turn on all the lights in your house. Cronos is no exception. Post-apocalyptic Poland is a canvas of architectural brutalism mixed with retro-futuristic technology that looks like something straight out of a 70s sci-fi movie. Deserted crack house streets, collapsed buildings covered in organic biomass, and a color palette ranging from gray to the grayest create an atmosphere so oppressive that you can almost smell the rust and despair. The 80s settings with their Cold War aesthetic are full of details. Propaganda posters, abandoned apartments, and recordings that tell you bits and pieces of the tragedy. It's as if Chernobyl and Alien had an illegitimate child and raised it in Nova Huda. The art direction is at an all-time high. The environments are designed with a sickening care, from quarantine camps to zones infested with pulsing flesh. Every scene screams something horrible happened here and compels you to explore, even if it's with your heart in your throat. And if you find a hidden cat, yes, there are collectible cats that grant upgrades, I swear you'll feel momentary relief, until an orphan jumps on you. Let's talk about combat, because Cronos flexes its muscles here. It's pure survival horror, with an emphasis on resource management that makes you value every bullet like a lottery ticket. The Traveler, with her heavy suit and tank-like movements, is no Lara Croft. Her controls are slow and deliberate, and every shot feels like a life or death decision. You have a decent arsenal: pistols, shaft guns, a limited flamethrower, and even incendiary grenades. But here's the cool twist. Enemies can merge with the corpses of their fallen comrades, becoming stronger and gaining abilities like spitting acid or being more resilient. The solution? Burning them before they do, which adds a strategic layer to combat. It's like playing chess with mutant zombies. The merge mechanic is a gem. It forces you to think quickly. Do you fire wildly and risk running out of ammo, or do you prioritize burning bodies? This risk-reward keeps you constantly on the edge, and when you face a boss, who by the way are brutal and well-designed, the adrenaline rush kicks in. The combat is tough, sometimes frustrating, but when you manage to escape a horde alive, you feel like a freaking John Wick of the post-apocalyptic wastelands. One of Cronos' most interesting hooks is its time travel mechanic. It's not just a narrative trick, it affects gameplay in creative ways. Traveling to 1980s Poland, the environments change dramatically, shifting from ruins to a world still alive, but on the verge of collapse. These sections introduce puzzles based on temporal anomalies, such as manipulating objects that exist in both timelines, or using special boots to walk on walls and ceilings. Yes, you read that right. You can run down the side of a bus or hang from the ceiling like a dystopian Spider-Man. These mechanics aren't used all the time, but when they appear, they're a breath of fresh air that breaks the monotony of shooting and exploration. the narrative also shines in these moments. As you collect essences, the traveler begins to question her mission and her very identity. The whispers and hallucinations that accompany these souls add a touch of psychological horror reminiscent of layers of fear. Furthermore, essences aren't just a narrative MacGuffin. They give you upgrades like more damage or better reloads, which integrates the story with the gameplay in an elegant way. If you play with headphones, and you should, Cronos' sound will pull you headfirst into its world. The soundtrack is subtle but effective, with industrial tones and haunting melodies that reinforce the atmosphere. The sound effects, from a creaking door to the roar of an orphan, are so immersive that more than once I found myself looking over my shoulder. The English voices with Spanish subtitles are adequate, although the traveler's monotone can feel a little cold at first. But hey, when you're fighting a monster that looks like a human blender, you don't need a Shakespearean monologue. Now for the ugly. Here comes the first low blow. Cronos' controls are, let's say, an unsolicited homage to 90s survival horrors. The traveler moves as if she's wearing a diving suit filled with lead, and the shoulder-mounted camera doesn't always help. Turning in tight spaces is a pain, and the lack of a dodge or block button feels like a mortal sin in a game where enemies are so aggressive. The aiming system is decent, but without fire assist, which you have to manually activate in the options, landing a shot is like trying to thread a needle in an earthquake. This isn't necessarily a flaw if you like the retro vibe, but in 2025, when games like Resident Evil 4 Remake have polished these systems, it feels like a step backward. While Cronos looks spectacular in terms of art design, the technical side isn't always up to par. On the PS5 version I played, there were sporadic frame rate drops, especially in combat with multiple enemies or in areas with a lot of biomass. I also encountered some annoying bugs, such as enemies getting stuck in walls or animations that looked like they were ripped from a Skyrim mod. The Nintendo Switch 2 version, I've heard, suffers even more from simplified textures and low-quality shadows. It's not a disaster, but these stumbles throw you off your game just as you're deep into the action. Cronos' story has some brilliant moments, but it doesn't always maintain its momentum. The premise of time travel and the collective is intriguing, but at times feels disconnected from the action. The documents and recordings you find are interesting, but many feel like filler and don't add much to the lore. Furthermore, the traveler's cold tone makes it hard to empathize with her at first, and while her arc develops, it doesn't quite have the emotional impact of, say, a James Sunderland. If you're looking for a heart-wrenching narrative like Silent Hill 2, you'll be left wanting more here. While combat is one of the game's strong points, it also has its dark side. The enemies are tough, and I mean really tough. Without a difficulty selector, the game can feel unforgiving, especially in the early hours when you're short on resources. Facing 5 orphans at once with only 6 bullets in your magazine is a sweaty experience, but it can also be frustrating if you keep dying. The merging mechanic is great, but sometimes enemies merge so quickly that you don't have time to react, and the flamethrower, which should be your ace in the hole, is so limited that it feels more like a decoration. This may be a plus for those who love a challenge, but if you lack patience, prepare to throw your controller against the couch. After about 17 hours exploring the wastelands of Cronos, and dying more times than I cared to admit, I can say that this game is a roller coaster. On one hand, it's a love letter to classic survival horror, with an immersive setting, tense combat, and time travel mechanics that add a fresh twist. The art direction, sound, and enemy design are all top-notch, and the feeling of constantly being on the edge of the abyss is exactly what you want in a game of this genre. On the other hand, clumsy controls, technical issues, and a narrative that doesn't always connect can make the experience flounder. If you're a fan of Dead Space, Resident Evil, or Silent Hill, Cronos will hook you. It has the DNA of those classics, but with enough personality to keep it from feeling like a cheap copy. However, if tank-like controls or high difficulty aren't your thing, you might get frustrated. My recommendation: play in performance mode, activate shot assist, and prepare for an experience that is as brutal as it is imperfect. Bloober Team has proven it can play in the big leagues of horror, and while Cronos isn't perfect, it's a solid step in the right direction.
So, are you up for donning the traveler's suit and taking on the orphans? If you decide to dive in, I have just one piece of advice. Don't let them merge. And for the love of all that's holy, find those cats. What do you think? Are you gonna dive into the apocalypse, or would you rather stay home with a less stressful game? Let me know in the comments. I'm joking, there are no comments, but you get my drift. See you in the next survival horror.